this, both of you, it's astonishing that given the state of the economy that these Democrats saw fit to push through this giant tax and spend bill. Mike, how do you see it, particularly given this poll?
Well, Dagan, the Affordable Care Act raised health insurance premiums 300% over the last decade. I expect the Inflation Reduction Act to do the exact same thing. It's not going to help inflation. It's going to hurt it. And, this poll came out. There's no crosstabs. So you don't know what the Republican weighting and the Democrat weighting was. And that's because it's far worse than you can see. Americans have taken out more new credit cards over the last 6 months at any point since 2008, credit card debts hitting an all-time high, and a massive chunk of the job gains that we saw on Friday are from people taking a second job, like 300,000 of the 500,000. The economy is in horrific shape if you are in the bottom two-thirds of the income stratosphere. The COVID-19 policies were one of the greatest transfers of wealth in the history of our country, rivaled only by the response to the great financial crisis. So everybody that's not already rich is getting absolutely squeezed, and even people with money can see it out there, how bad things are getting. They're going forward and passing all this crazy climate nonsense because they know they're going to be out of power. This is their last chance to steal from the American taxpayers and reward their donors and themselves.
Like private equity. Christian, it's just astonishing that they, again, a few celebrities are getting slammed for sending thoughts and prayers to Anne Heche after she crashed her car into a house going roughly 90 miles per hour, set the house on fire, burned it to the ground. Here's Alec Baldwin.
Hey, I just wanted to send out my best wishes and all my love to Anne Heche. There's not a lot of women I work with who are brave in the way that Anne is brave. I love you, Anne. I love you, and I think you're such a talented person, and I hope everything is okay. I hope you come through this.
In an earlier podcast, Heche said she was chasing vodka with wine and hardcore reporting into what actually happened and what led up to this. What could have been a deadly accident?
Yeah, look, you have to imagine that there's some sort of chemicals involved, like when Tiger drove his car off the road in about 20 minutes south of there. But I actually heard that Alec Baldwin, that was his take too. His first take on this was like, hey, come on, give her a break. At least she didn't shoot somebody.
You're joking.
Yes.
Yes, you're joking. We have to say that because
yes.
People who sometimes like to do little book reports on the show, they don't have a sense of humor and can't detect
definitely
sarcasm.
A joke. There was definitely a joke.
Yeah, exactly. But and Rosanna Arquette was tweeting about this. And time for the word on Wall Street. Top investors watching your money. Joining me now, he's been here for an hour. Michael Lee, strategy founder Michael Lee, Amerivet Securities head of U.S. rates Gregory Farinello, and Claro Advisors managing principal and founder Ryan Bellinger. Mike, let me start with you. Futures are up this morning after a better than expected jobs report on Friday. The S&P and NASDAQ up for 3 weeks in a row. Earnings season is in full swing. We're looking ahead to Disney out Wednesday, retail earnings next week. Mike, what are you watching? What are you expecting?
So I'm looking mostly at price action. So if we get the S&P 500 above 4230, you can expect to see some additional upsides. If we start selling off there, we could be in a trend to go back and reverse the lows. And I think everything is really Fed dependent at the moment. Not entirely up to now, but I think going forward it's going to be Fed dependent. So if we have a red hot inflation number and we see no signs of month over month slowing, so the consensus estimate for CPI this week is 0.2% month over month. If that's the type of month over month number we see, I don't know that you can announce inflation has peaked, but it certainly looks that way. We're starting to get some of that data coming through in the CPI numbers, but you have seen the consumer absolutely fall apart. Credit card debt is hitting an all-time high. The number of new credit cards consumers are taking on is only rivaled by 2008. At the same time, consumer sentiment is hitting all-time lows, and the savings rate is at the lowest level it's been post-Great Financial Crisis. None of this is good news, and you're starting to see some real dramatic slowing. Even though we got this employment number on Friday, people are saying that's evidence that the economy is not in a recession. Some 300,000 of those 500,000 jobs added were part-time jobs, and although we are now at an all-time labor market high, that's since the beginning of 2020, and you've had, in theory, between 2 and 3 million people added to the labor force. So there are some structural problems with the labor market. I think with the way jobs are counted in this country post-COVID. So I don't know how reliable these numbers are as overall bellwethers in the economy, but I'm looking at price action. You have to ask yourself, was all the carnage that's coming in the economy reflected when we were down at the June lows, when the S&P was down 24, 25%, the NASDAQ was down over 30%. Was that all reflected there, and is the market just ahead of this? Or is this a classic bear market rally? I tend to think it's the latter, but it's hard to have conviction in either direction at the moment. This is the most confusing time to invest in my entire career.
It's certainly the wildest economic situation I've ever seen in my lifetime. And I do have, it harkens back to the 70s for sure. We were showing the labor participation rate. I don't know if we were showing for July, it actually fell to 62.1%. Greg, Mike, do you think that's even a possibility?
I mean, look, in a serious note, we don't know that Joe Biden will even be alive to run again. I mean, he's serious cognitive decline. If you've if you've seen this happen to relatives in your family, it's sad. And it's sad for his family, but he is being propped up, and the powers that want him to stay in there. Otherwise, they'd be hinting other things. I didn't know Maureen Dowd was still a thing. But I guess she's still out there. But he's 79. Trump is 76, and he's doing an hour and a half, 2-hour speech at CPAC, and then the next day he's doing a 2-hour rally. And so some people just have the energy and the stamina, can go in their 80s and 90s and really keep going. Unfortunately for Joe Biden, it doesn't look like he's one of them. It's a serious impairment. I think the one to watch out for the next election in 2024 is Gretchen Whitmer. So the GOP really needs to get behind Tudor Dixon, because if Whitmer wins re-election, she will run for president. She has a great chance of being the nominee. And if she is the nominee, she will carry Michigan, making it hard for any Republican candidate to become the next president. So that is the one I'm watching out for. Typically, governors come from purple states. Or you get a red governor or a red person from a blue state, or a blue person from a red state. That's typically how these things play out. So, I mean, I don't put any weight in Mayor Pete or Kamala or any of these other headliners. I say the one to watch out for is Gretchen Whitmer. But look, I can't see Joe Biden running again. I mean, how can he get on the debate stage or do campaign events? I mean, he barely can get through speeches now. How are they going to cover that up with such a degree the way they did the last time, unless there's some sort of COVID-like thing that's happening that can allow him to campaign from his basement?
Gentlemen, thank you. Coming up, fled over their fear of crime. New York Mayor, people forget that the $2 trillion spending last year is partially responsible for the inflation that they're feeling now. That more spending isn't going to keep inflation elevated. They're assuming the American people are dumb and or forgetful. And that's always been a mistake, but they have constantly talked to the American people and treated the American people as if we're all a bunch of rubes, rednecks, hayseeds, and hicks. The basket of deplorables. That's really who we are, that we don't understand basic math and finance.
Yeah, Dagan, after they did away with the carried interest loophole, taking that out of this last last bill, it could not be more clear as if it wasn't already. The Democrat Party is the party of elites. They have a great disdain for the working class, and you hear it all over the place. Oh, gas prices are crushing people. Mayor Pete will go out and buy a Tesla, get an extra $50,000 or $60,000. I'm sorry, if I can't afford an extra $20 or $30 a week to fill my gas tank, how in gosh darn heck am I going to be able to go out and just buy a $50,000 Tesla just like that because gas prices are higher? It's the disconnect now could not be more extreme. Just another note on this poll, they had Democrats weighted 4 points above Republicans. Republicans in this midterm turnout are going to be up anywhere from 2 to 6 over the Democrats in terms of turnout. We will know more after Labor Day when Republicans start picking up the phone and answering these polls. So in all likelihood, the numbers are much worse than we just were reflected, and these were horrific numbers, near historic lows on handling of all these interests.
Who said that a Tesla costs $50,000? Good luck finding it. I mean, you know, that new Ford F-150, by the way, that Lightning, that thing is like a six-figure automobile. The Teslas around here, like, I thought they were running like $80,000. Mike?
Model 3. You can get a Model 3 for somewhere in the $50,000 range, depending on what you add to it, what you don't add to it. But, you know, those are hard to get. And you want a Model S or one of the better ones, or you want to add, get the SUV or add some features to it, you're looking at a six-figure price item, which is nothing if you're a McKinsey consultant disconnected from the world.
Right. I think that I have to read the details of the bill. I know Rivian was upset that the bill didn't include more expensive electric vehicles because these companies couldn't exist without handouts from the government, and their handouts directly coming from the American taxpayer. It's just mind-boggling. Coming up, the Democrats go on another spending spree.